Hej och varmt välkommen till ett nytt avsnitt av Framtidens E-Handel. Mitt namn är Björn Påmas Benger och idag så ska vi prata med grundarna av bolaget Ninepine. Varmt välkomna till podden Benjamin Lau and Kousha Torabi.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Tack så mycket.
How are you guys?
Good, fantastic. Motivated, excited about everything that's going on. Wake up every day, super grateful that we get to work with these challenges and execute on just stuff that has a lot of impact. It's at times stressful, but primarily it's very exciting.
To me, you guys are, a company that is undervalued. You're not talked about that much in media, but you're performing like hell. In 2024, I think you guys are heading for 200 million SEK in revenues with about 50 million SEK in profits. How did you guys meet, Ben?
Yeah, Kousha and I actually met at our time at Stockholm School of Economics. So we did the masters together, and I clearly remember hearing about this guy, Kousha. He did the bachelor's here. He has an e-com. He has his own business. And when you're a student, like hearing that a student has a business was super cool. And I remember going up to Kousha like at a lunch break between lectures, like, "Oh, Kousha, I heard you had a business." And then I told him that I had a business in Australia, where I'm from. And then we kind of connected there. And afterwards, we both landed jobs working at Facebook together. We lived together. We worked together. So we had a lot of close-up time together.
But was there an instant bromance, Kousha? I mean, when you guys met at Handelshögskolan in Stockholm, how did you guys bond?
Well, what I remember from the first time I met, because I had seen Ben, and Ben was just going up to everyone, being super social. We were like, yeah, this Australian guy in our masters, and Ben was always introducing, "I'm Ben, by the way," always like, okay, so this is Ben, by the way. And Ben comes up to me this lunch break that he's talking about, and we start talking a bit about like, yeah, Ben has his production company, and I'm like, I have an e-com. I have had an e-com since I was 18, and I just realized that if I improve my product pictures, more people buy my product. And we're talking about that. We both realized very early that there's a benefit of getting closer to each other, probably. So Ben continues. This is like 10 minutes into the conversation. And Ben's like, I'm actually looking for people to write my uppsats with. You know what I mean? Like that was at uni, that's what's top of mind, right? And you just want, when you realize you can gain value from being with someone beyond just the school stuff, you want to spend more time with them. You want to end up being in the same group as them, because in the breaks, you talk about your grander visions that could continue beyond uni. And I think when Ben and I had time together outside, or time to talk about non-school stuff, we were always on the same page. We were very much aligned with our ideas of what we wanted our ideal future to sort of look like. So I would definitely call it some sort of an entrepreneurial bromance.
And what does that look like? So Ben, what does your ideal future look like?
I think we're kind of living it right now in terms of like how we split our workflows. I think it makes complete sense. So my background, even though I studied business, finance, and accounting, I had a production company. So I come from a quote unquote more creative background, photos, videos. While Kousha, his company was an e-commerce. He had physical products, and that was really cool to see. I remember just hearing like, "Oh, I'm going to the post office to drop off 20 packages of these shakers that he was selling back in the day."
Wow.
I was so impressed. You're 21, we're at school. Most kids, have jobs at the bar, and he's shipping product.
I was tight with all the people in the PostNord office.
But
everyone
I think,
knew me.
yeah. But in terms of like the ideal future, I think we're living it right now, to be honest. Kousha is focused on with the website, the advertising, the marketing, and the finances, whereas I focus on the product, which I think really, really is inspiring, as well as the content part of the business, which is pretty natural. And if you talk to the 18-year-old Ben who was like shooting clubs and events and parties, that I would be doing this still, I would be completely shocked.
And that's a quite common thing among, entrepreneurial couples, that one person is focusing on the soft values and the brand values and the content and all that stuff. And then you have the other person, Kousha, that is focusing on the hard parts, which is the data, which is meta, which is, ads and all these parts. But Kousha, we met for the first time at this Cliro event when we pulled you up on stage.
Yeah.
And after the event, we spoke with the Break It guy, Stefan at Break It. And we asked you a bunch of questions. One of the questions was like, what did you do before Ninepine? You told us about like 15, 20 unsuccessful businesses that you used to run, and now you do Ninepine that is super successful. Tell me a little bit about the shitty projects that you did in the past.
Yeah, so, I mean, some of them had quite a bit of potential, I think, to be fair, but they just weren't, there was something with them. They weren't scalable enough, or they weren't aligned with what we wanted to build. Maybe they weren't aligned with the values that we have as people. I think the key thing here is like both Ben and I, we've always done something. I was doing stuff this is going to sound like I was doing bad stuff. I wasn't. But I was doing stuff way before I could legally register a company, like knocking doors, selling flowers. I was doing things all the time. I've always had this in me. I always wanted to make my own pocket money. And then that went hand in hand with always wanting to build something. So when I started the first e-com, Silverback it was called, I was the first one to import stainless steel bottles for protein shakes in Sweden, because there was a massive hype about plastic releasing hormones that were similar to estrogen. And I thought that was going to be a banger, because people who are into training, they want to avoid estrogen, right?
The new speak-mattan.
Pretty much, exactly. Yeah, I mean, it sort of worked a little bit in the beginning, but the main point is like, as I kept building that business, I started other things. You just keep learning about businesses, business models, discussing with Ben. And some of those projects, you know, like we said, some of them had potential. We had a wallet brand made out of cork leather, which is quite sustainable, or was claimed to be at least. It worked, but you know, we're looking at average order values of like 350 SEK. CPAs were going up. It's something you don't buy very often. The average yearly spend on wallets, not super high, etc. So I think most of these projects came with learnings. If what you're asking is, would Ninepine have been as successful if we hadn't had 10, 12 other projects live before? Not a chance in this world. Just another proof that you need to start early.
And it's interesting because there is so many success stories out there, right? And there's always this hassle behind the success stories. If you have the insights in media, it always looks like it happened from like within 3 years, they just blew up and became insanely successful companies with insane valuations. It doesn't really happen by accident on this level. That's one of the most important takeaways. And I also want to ask you guys about motivation. And Ben, you know, how come you guys did so many projects? Because most people, they're, you know, going to Thailand or Australia to chill and, you know, drink beer or whatever, and they don't really put in the hours and the hustle needed. Why are you guys so freaking motivated?
That's a really great question. And I think if you zoom out and you take a bird's eye perspective, I think it really comes from like childhood times. Can't speak for you, Kousha, but we have a similar type of family backgrounds. You know, I grew up in this Cantonese Asian household, which prioritized study, piano, becoming a doctor. Neither of us became doctors, but our siblings did. So they were the pride and joy of the family. But then, you know, both of us competed in sports. You know, I was an elite swimmer. I was okay. So even in school, I was getting good grades, training 7 times a week, swimming, then played water polo, played basketball, had 2 gym sessions. And this was all throughout high school. And so you're so used to this kind of hard work and seeing it pay off. In swimming, it was times improving or not improving in my case. So that hustle probably comes from that. But it's true, when you're working, especially in peak tech, when we were working in, everyone said, you know, I'm going to start a business. I'd say our cohort of about 50 people, everyone at lunch, I'm going to start a business. And most people had a side hustle. And I think people soon realized that a side hustle doesn't get you very far. And it was actually quite offensive in the beginning. People were coming up to us like saying, oh, I heard about your side hustle. It's going so well. I'm like, mate, this is no side hustle. And I guess the motivation really comes internally, really. When I was working the corporate job, you know, you have your performance reviews and you have the whole promotion ladder cycle. And I would see these entrepreneurs that we got to speak with, but even when I walked on the street and I saw a builder and they were building a house or an apartment and they had this final thing to show for. And I really felt that was lacking from my life. I was jealous, envious of these builders who could say, I did this floor. I couldn't say that at that time. And I think that really motivated me to like work on the business and create a platform that we have now.
Have you ever had a motivational dip, Kousha?
No, I've never considered it a factor, to be honest. I've never had a spike. I've never had a dip. It's very much very, very similar to Ben. I've grown up with parents who came in the 90s, started from scratch. Never in my life, not a single time, have I heard any of my parents complain that they are tired, demotivated. It's just not been in our vocabulary, but not to the extent where it's, bad for your mental health. It's more, look, we're building something. I love building things, right? I've been building subwoofers for cars and bows and arrows and just anything I like building. And when you start building something, the excitement, even if it's a 2-day process, in this case, we're building something that could be a decade-long process, maybe a couple decades, maybe lifelong, right? And when you're building something, of course, there will be periods where you feel like you want a different pace because you have other things in your life. But overall, the motivation would only need to come if you need some sort of consistency because you're not as convinced that this is the right thing to do right now. I've had motivational dips when it comes to training sometimes. They can come up and down. But something like this that is enabling the life that I want to live, no, not a chance. I think motivation as a concept is very overrated.
Have you ever questioned each other as co-founders to Ninepine when it comes to motivation? And the context here, I think, is that Ben, you have a kid. Having a kid is freaking hard because it takes a lot of time, a lot of efforts. The times you work during the 24 hours of each day maybe differs from like your schedule, Kousha, because you don't have kids, you have more flexibility. Has this ever been a tension in your relationship?
I would say a direct no. Even from the onset, when we started Ninepine, we were pretty clear. We wanted this really agile, this very hybrid type of workflow. So we actually work from home still, mainly, and we really thrive. We have our own home offices. We come to our shared space when we need to for product and some meetings. But it's always been the case. If I want to go to Australia for a few months to be with my family, then Kousha's not going to say anything. He'll probably promote it. That's a challenge, and because of time zones mainly, and we've solved that by going places. But with the kid thing, I think Kousha has a pretty good understanding. He's seen it up, first hand up close, and I may be working late hours at night, and he might go to bed early, and on the weekends, I am full time with my child, and that is my priority, and I think he respects that. But it would be difficult, I guess, starting the business in my current life stage, I must say. Being not a parent when I started the company, I think really gave me a lot more time to focus on Ninepine.
How old are you guys?
31.
32.
All right. And how do you feel, Kousha, that you can build or gain trust towards your business partner?
Look, we've built this, right? But it's not been easy. We've been through stuff. We've worked both in our dynamic as co-founders, but also just personally and just challenges. And I think like anything, right? Just like you can build love in a personal relationship through going through things together and working through it, it's very similar in this case. And as long as, I can genuinely want the happiness and I care for Ben's happiness and long-term health, because I understand the importance of that for my personal goals and our business that we have together, then yeah, it's not even hard. As long as you can just walk around and assume good intentions and assume that, as long as we can sync, we're on the same page, we have the same end goal, we might not disagree with every single, milestone along the way, but we can always zoom out and figure things out. And I think by doing that every single week and continuously, you will build this trust with your business partner.
The fact that you guys are doing different things within the business, that you're specialized in different things, has this been an enabler or a problem within the business?
I think it's definitely an enabler. Yet I wouldn't say we specialize into silos. Kousha is well aware of what I'm doing with product. We do a lot of the high level, say the planning together still. Same with the content. I may be executing, but Kousha has a lot of ideas as well. And the same thing on the website front and the, advertising and marketing. I think what makes us a little bit unique, it's everything's relative. But the fact that we both have a similar CV in terms of the business background, working in tech and especially advertising in the digital space, we have a very similar base understanding. Because I think usually if you had a company like ours and you had a creative team, they're creatives. and they have their own kind of biases and things they've learned in creative design school or whatever. Yet if I'm on a shoot, for example, I'm thinking ads first. I'm thinking CVR. I'm thinking, how is this falling? Will that impact return rates? And I don't think you can get that without the baggage that we have.
I agree with everything you said. And I would like to add to it that with our background from Meta, Facebook it was called at the time, we learned to work very efficiently with cross-functionals. And what that was is I could work with a client and I realized I need more stats in here. I need more data. I need an A/B test to convince this CMO that blah, blah, blah. And we would go involve the marketing science team. And involving the marketing science team, your success with doing that is very dependent on you properly giving them the full context. And in this case, I am very aware of Ben's skill level when it comes to the specific areas where I am niched. For example, meta ads. It's a very good example, right? I know what Ben knows and what he doesn't know, which new functions that have come out that I haven't briefed him about. But what I do know is like, if I do a good job in presenting the context, presenting the data, and I need Ben's input on like, here's the data, what can we read between the lines here so that we can make a decision and execute, then I can get a lot of value from involving Ben. And vice versa. When Ben does something about product, he knows where my opinion and my way of thinking is valuable in, giving input on that product development process. But he will also brief me on the details I don't know. What are the properties of this material? Why did we go for this setup, that setup, the stretch in the waist, etc. And I think this is not something that we try to develop as a superpower just between us as founders, but we realize as this company grows, this is something we need to ingrain into the culture. We need to build these teams and set up these processes where building context and the transfer of information across the different functions is seamless, because that's when you can, what we believe is when you can grow to a very large size, but stay agile and have people make the right decisions without having been involved in all the ops across the whole business.
And I want to deep dive into, what Ninepine is, because I assume a lot of podcast listeners don't even know what it is. But before we do that, it's super interesting what you say, because it is similar to Jeff Bezos and Amazon, right? So within the management in Amazon, before the meeting starts, they head out this document with the brief, with the context, basically. And I think what is interesting is really the importance of context for efficient decision making. So can you maybe elaborate that a little bit, like how that works and what processes you have in place, Kousha, to make efficient decision making internally?
Sure. So if we continue on the same sort of example, right? Let's talk about the Facebook ads, the meta ads. Let's say we have a structure, we have a setup. The setup is built so that our system can send one ad at each point in time into the auction and compete against others. And if we win, we show it to the desired person that hopefully has a high probability of purchasing our product that we're advertising. Now, maybe we get to a point where we feel like, look, we're launching something that we're not working very collection-based. We might launch a line that has a different use case, aka if we do it well, the algorithm will probably find a new clique of people that could be somewhat different, maybe not super significantly different, but somewhat different from the people who the other products are advertised to, aka maybe this needs us to create a separate ad structure, live with potential cannibalization in our, in how the advertising system works, but be okay with it because the overlap is small enough because we believe the products are different enough. Now, this question is something we need to discuss. Ben, is the product different enough? Do you think the target group is different enough? Which data do we have if we look at the reviews, if we look at the email list, if we look at the demographics, the different markets? How confident can we be that when we run this, we won't shoot ourselves in the foot and just have two big ad structures that both become inefficient because none of them has a high probability of getting enough data in the long run? So that one would be a very simple process. It's like, okay, I'm making a big change that could potentially have a lot of impact. This needs to be brought up at the all hands. And then I need to give this context, but not go too deep. I can explain how the algo works. I can explain how many % overlap and cannibalization in target groups are okay. Just the data that you don't need a, mathematics background to understand, like Venn diagram stuff. And then we make a decision. And sometimes from these discussions, it's not just about the decision of, okay, do we pump these products into the same structure or do we put them in the separate structure? Sometimes it lands in like, okay, they're so similar, but we need to differentiate with price. Let's charge more for this one. Okay, then we have a follow-up challenge, separate structure. If we put it in the same, CPA is going to be higher. Can they compete? No, they're not going to get any delivery. Now we have to put it separately. Or do we put them in the same, and instead of optimizing for CPA, optimize for ROAS? Now everyone can understand CPA. Everyone can understand ROAS. Everyone can understand a very simple context and the different data points here, right? But everyone with different levels of business savviness, different experiences, and different understandings of the world and our target groups are going to come with different input on, okay, is there a big enough market for us to charge 80% as much for this product so that we can achieve efficiency in a separate structure? Or are we going to lose our existing clients? Does that make sense?
It makes sense. And I have so many follow-up questions. I'm thinking that this will be probably one of the main topics, because everybody in Sweden, Scandinavia right now that knows about Ninepine thinks it's a business that is built entirely on freaking meta ads. I know that is not true. I know there is so much more to it. So let's talk about that soon. But first, Ben, if you give us an introduction to Ninepine, what the fuck is Ninepine? Tell us.
Yeah, so as Kousha mentioned, we had a few ventures that obviously don't exist today, but we had 3 hypotheses during a time when we lived together and hung out all the time. The first one was, I think the Scandi aesthetic was underutilized as an export. And of course, there are some great Stockholm examples there. And coming from Australia, like everyone loves Scandi this, Scandi that. The second thing was we kind of thought, okay, there's a semi-gap, maybe it's a murky blue ocean, not really blue ocean, kind of space where you could really merge kind of the fashion aspect with some of the comfort and utility. Historically, especially in the 2010s, you had these very technical outdoor companies per se, and then you had these very high-end, cool fashion companies, and maybe finding some sort of hybrid in between. But I think most importantly, the third thing that we kind of realized quickly was the operational inefficiencies of legacy companies. These big household brands, how they went to they go-to-market strategies, how they developed products 3 years in advance, how they adapted to the digital landscape. Because what we saw when we worked with a lot of tech companies was, they had the whole lean, doing sprints, they shipped products quickly, and they could just, do all that kind of stuff. And we could do that, but in a different context, which happens to be apparel. And then Ninepine was born. And Ninepine, we're all about the luxury of comfort.
Yeah, so just to add a little bit to that, we became the luxury of comfort as a consequence of what we like to think of as data-driven product development and sort of, I would call it, maybe design thinking is the right word. We only had 1 course on that at uni, but it's definitely observing, having your customer's perspective, trying to understand what they want, but also trying to understand what they would want without knowing it themselves, right? And we started off more in loungewear. When we started in 2019, there was a big hype around leggings as well. There were a lot of people wearing just regular black leggings with everyday outfits. So we had that as well. We had that push. And then as we went on, we realized that there seems to be a demand for this loungewear stuff that looks less like loungewear. There's a segment slightly older than the people who wear leggings to brunch, who want this stuff that feels like activewear, but can wear it every day. And we started seeing that some people were wearing our joggers and stuff that looked quite informal. They were wearing it to work, mainly like nurses and people who were quite flexible with their outfits. And as we made some of these items look slightly more formal, we saw even that our like lounge pants that looked like suit pants were worn by lawyers and politicians. And we're like, okay, there's a massive segment here. Comfort could be a game in itself. And if we want to build something great that customers love and come back to, let's explore that. And then that's where Ninepine evolved.
How did you put your finger on this fact? Like, what was the data input that made you come to this conclusion?
Just purely looking at what sells. And when you have a digital marketing approach, or let's call it an algorithm-based demand identification or demand generation approach, you will very clearly see which products have traction, which products are driving the traffic. And if you explore that path and if you have enough data to trust the algo, and you keep exploring the path where, which product is driving the profitable traffic to my site, and you keep developing with iterations, V1, V2, V3, you listen to feedback, you feed your reviews into AI tools if you have to, you send out survey emails. We haven't done many panels, but that's also a tool you could use. Then you're going to gain crazy insights into what your target group wants.
I think it all kind of boils down to, I guess, design thinking. I guess none of us come from industrial design background, but that course at Handelshögskolan, where we learned about design thinking, popularized by IDEO, and we actually had this talk from the guys from Veriday, which they got bought out by McKinsey, and it's part of McKinsey Design now. And he talked about how they worked with clients, and they observed them, they followed them, they empathize, and they made prototypes using paper and blah, blah, blah. And I remember after that lecture, like everyone was like, whoa, I want to work there. And I guess that's our background in design. That's our background in product. And it goes really well with the whole digital thing because you get the feedback quick. No, we can't get feedback as quick as an app can, but we try to the best we can.
It almost sounds like you guys didn't experience product market fit within the brand itself, but that you experienced product market fit on a product level. Like this category or this specific product or this specific fit or this specific design seems to work and this stuff doesn't seem to work. Is that the case?
I mean, you can interpret it like that. I guess it's how you define brand, right? So if we define brand our way, it's very inspired by the brand flip and the brand gap. Brand is what people perceive you to be, not what you tell them they are. So what do people think of Ninepine? And that's the sum of all the experiences with Ninepine. A flashy ad and a cool video or shoot, editorial, that's just one aspect. But number one, you have to get the customers first. From the first touch to the website, to the logistics, to the feel, and then the post-purchase. Well, you have to be a customer first. Then that's how you build the brand. I think it's probably very difficult. I mean, I could be wrong, but probably very difficult to start on the other end when you create the brand first without the people who have experienced your company.
You also need to have enough money to make the investments necessary to create this great experience. And I think that's where a big misconception is, in my humble opinion, with many businesses today. They believe that if you invest a lot in a party or in a production or in a certain level of photography, that's where you build the brand. Whereas for us, we've always semi-jokingly said like money first, brand later. And it really comes to, if you have enough profitability, it's not going to hurt when you pay your 3PL a little bit more to create that shorter lead time because you're focusing on LTV and cohorts and not the profit on the first time purchase. And that to us is brand. I consider every single cent that we spend extra on logistics to get the item to the customer faster, that's brand to me.
And the product as well. I mean, the product has
obviously,
to be a wow.
Obviously, the product has to be great. But final point to add to that as well in terms of product market fit, because that's where you started. If you are to go super hardcore, Ben and I came more from a marketing background, right? We're marketers. We developed these products, well, one, largely from a marketing perspective, and one of the factors we use there is pushability. How pushable is this product within our business model? And our business model includes spending a lot of our revenue on digital advertising.
What exactly do you mean by pushability?
How likely is it that you can price this product so that you have a high enough gross margin that allows you to spend a realistic cost per acquisition that gives you a bottom line profit or at least break even with a good LTV? And pushability can depend on so many factors. And of course, if you nail product market fit and if you do all these things from scratch, then sure, your CPA should be lower and you should be able to scale on it. But if you want to build a business and sell products at a certain price and people have never heard of you, you need to develop your products based off of a pushability factors that align with how you acquire customers. In our case, if we acquire customers through demand generation and creating curiosity and beefing up product pages and getting good reviews in because people like the stuff, we need to make sure that, I'm just making this up, if the type of ads that we use that perform are close-ups that show a lot of the material and high-end stuff, then we need to use materials that look good in close-ups on these ads. That is what would have pushability for us. If you're a company that sells very technical jackets and you need high-end zips and all these hidden pockets and stuff, you need to develop your product accordingly so that you can develop these ads that allow pushability at a profitable CPA. And if you don't think this way, if you go for this product market fit first and you haven't figured out a way to acquire customers with the products you're going to develop, then you're going to be sitting there talking to very expensive Facebook consultants trying to figure out the algorithm.
And isn't that insanely common that, customer acquisition is broken within the Scandinavian direct-to-consumer landscape? And I'm thinking, we talked about this a little bit before we started recording, like the balance of operational excellence and doing shit insanely efficient. And, we're going to talk about that too, but like the content cycle, how quickly you can have an idea of a content piece and deliver that content piece and test it within the ads ecosystem, like the operational aspect of the business, and then the soft aspect of the business, which is community, which is brand, which might be product and product development, etc. Like the balance of these two, it feels like, Ben, like the current climate is weighting the soft parts more than they should be doing.
I think this really depends on what type of businesses we're talking about. Perhaps in the fashion apparel space, I think you may be correct in saying that, because as Kousha has the expertise and the meta, and I know a little bit of it. It's only one part of the story. As you said, it's operational excellence, and you've touched on something that was really interesting, which is the speed, agility. When we worked with clients and just figuring out and listening to the politics like some companies have. You had the marketing team, you had the brand team, then you had the e-com team and the product team, and they had to have projects and meetings to get to a decision. I think one of the cornerstones of our business is agility. Agility doesn't mean we do everything ourselves. We have a hybrid workflow, but meaning that we can go from idea to ideation, prototyping, shipping, A/B testing, whether it's a content or a piece on the website, within hours. And I think one of the most important things is that everyone who's key in the company are upskilled in all the different platforms. And if Kousha needs me to do something meta, I can do it. We're deep in Shopify. We're deep in the ongoing, which is our WMS system. But we all have the same tools. But I think it's just having this 360 understanding, and it goes back to being cross-functional.
Yeah, so we were talking about basically the improvement cycle, and that one is insanely fast at Ninepine. Let's deep dive into that later. First, I want to walk through your numbers, because you founded the company in 2019. That year, you made 1.4 million SEK in revenues, no profits that year, but no losses either. 2020, about 10 million SEK in revenues, 1 million SEK in profits. 2021, about 27 million SEK in revenues, 2.5 million SEK in profits. 22, about 47 million SEK in revenues, 1.7 million SEK in profits. And then 2023, 101 million SEK in revenues with 15.2 million SEK in profits. How did it feel, Kousha, to reach the 100 million SEK mark?
Great, actually.
Good for your ego.
Great for the ego. The numbers you have are actually post-maxed periodiseringsfond and post-tax.
All right.
So in my head, my ego gets hurt by hearing this. It's quite a bit higher. No, jokes aside. It was great. It was great. We had a milestone. We had this little doc where we had our budgets and this is the road to 100 mil, because 100 mil sounds like the golden number. And then somewhere along the way, we adjusted that and made that 100 million profit instead of having it as a revenue goal. And then somewhere along that way, we matured and we're like, let's not look at things from this perspective anymore.
But if we still look at this from this perspective, what's the forecast for 2024?
We're following the same sort of linear trend. So I would say it looks like we're doubling in size again. If we don't, it is more likely that we have decided to slow down certain pace because we have some infrastructure things we want to fix before scaling in a certain market or so. We're not hardcore on these targets. We are fairly relaxed. We did 100 mil last year. Anything above 140 this year would be fantastic, right? Fantastic growth. But then again, as long as we have great products that we're selling and we're adding new customers and we're bringing this, what we believe to be great products and great experience to new customers in new countries and sometimes in our existing ones, then I think we're going to keep growing it.
Exciting. And where's this heading? I mean, where will Ninepine be in 5-10 years from now?
I don't want to put a number to it, not for my own peace of mind, but I'll say this much. It is going to have a yearly revenue that corresponds directly to how much we've been able to grow this business without losing what creates the personal touch right now. I would rather have us go flat 3 years in a row than have growth where we have compromised on the experience and how people speak about Ninepine. I do think, because we are planning on growing, obviously, so I do think we will succeed in scaling, but this also means that making very conscious choices around our business model, around, how we view the cost per ticket in customer support, because that's one of our USPs, having great and personal customer support, customer experiences, and how well we are able to scale with our current mix in digital advertising. How, for example, let's say we launch something that is fantastic at acquiring customers, but we have to acquire them at break even. It has great LTV, but we acquire them at break even. Does that mean we're going to have a lot of growth and do an EBIT of 0 that year? All these decisions have to be made along the way. But one thing that is for sure is when we started at Facebook, they were joking about having 2 million euros per employee in revenue, whereas Google was at 1.1 at the same time. And then Facebook hired a bunch of people and went down to about 1 million euro per employee per year. Right now, we're about 2 million euros of revenue per full-time employee, just over. And I think from how we look at it and how we plan to build out the teams, I think we're going to be able to keep that.
And I think, if I'm going to jump in here, I think there's, from a softer point of view, the org, I think 5-10 years, I think we're really going to try to build this digital native tech-inspired org in the consumer space. And it's quite new from the cultural perspective, where we're working, how we work, again, cross-functional and hybrid. And then from a personal ego perspective, it would be my dream to walk down the street in any city and my kid's like, oh, it's my dad's store. And being I won't say heritage brand, but growing up in Australia, you've heard of these Swedish brands. Some are still standing today, some have fallen off, but it will be amazing to be one that stands the test of time.
And something that is really impressive here is that you have been growing without external funding, right? So you have been using your own cash flow and achieved this kind of growth within 5 years, which is super uncommon, especially pre-high interest rate climate and so on. What shitstorms has there been? So I assume you have overpurchased some products at some point, you had to sell it off at some cheap price point and fucked up your gross margins during those 2-3 months or whatever. So what shitstorms have you experienced in the past 5 years?
That's a good question. I think the stockouts is definitely one of the biggest issues. And I think it's a common issue that you see with new startups, especially in the e-com. Of course, with working capital, you have to pay deposits generally and then pay balances and your money is locked up. I think the first 3 or 4 years, our biggest challenge was that we got products into our warehouse in Sweden and then we went marketing and then we sold out. So there was quite this, peaks and troughs up and down, up and down. And that's very inefficient from an operational, but also from an advertising point of view. That was a huge thing. How do we manage stock? And how can we actually get more money to buy stock? And it later turned out that we really focused on the cash flow aspect, building these super tight relationships with our suppliers and working with credit and debt financing. There's so many instruments these days. But it did take us a few years to learn how to, play in the waters there.
Let's talk about that a little bit, because there's obviously the external stuff, which is stock financing you talked about, or liquidity sheets you can build, or whatever, and then the actual stock that you own, ensuring that the products that you buy are not sitting on in the warehouse for 2 or 3 years. So what has been your learnings there about stock health, and what pivot has happened in the past years to make your stock simply more healthy?
I would say, one, we have the benefit of developing these bestsellers with a pushability mindset from the start. So unless something significantly changes in terms of your pushability, the only thing that normally happens is that, okay, this product is not as hot anymore. It loses some traction. So the CPA goes up a bit, but you can still move it. And if you're not overstocking that one and you have, enough of your revenue coming from few enough SKUs or different articles, then you're pretty good. And in our case, we've tried to, and we still have that mentality where we want 80% plus of our revenue to come from 20% of what we sell, right? It goes very well with algorithm-based marketing. You're not supposed to, push too wide of an assortment. And it also goes very well with knowing a lot about the products you push. I think that's been super healthy, but in terms of storms along the way related to that was, as we realized that, okay, we're growing quite fast. If we want to sustain this level of growth and just keep adding customers, we need a lot of product dev, an area where we didn't have a lot of prior experience, right? So we had to build these processes that minimize the risk of ever sitting there without having a viral enough bestseller to push. That has been more of a challenge than, what's the risk of overstocking X?
What do these processes look like?
Well, when we were working with a bunch of clients, we were analyzing a lot of them from the perspective of what are they doing wrong or what do we not want to do? And as a consequence of that, I think it's super healthy that Ben and I, we look at these processes and are like, we need to build the process ourselves. Let's not look at what everyone else is doing. Let's build this so that it works well with our business model, with what we want to achieve, but also works well with the three core drivers of what we do. We have product, we have website, we have marketing. Those are contents inside there, right? I would consider everything else a hygiene factor, pretty much. And let's build a process that works with our workflows, but also let's build a process that when this jet ski, Ninepine is a jet ski until say 100 mil, right? Over 100 mil, Ninepine is becoming the size of a small yacht, right? When Ninepine is doing $1 billion in revenue, we could be considered a big, Oasis of the Seas or big Celia line. But we still want to move like a jet ski. That's the whole thing. So what is necessary for a product development process to be able to spit out these bestsellers according to our criteria for pushability, gross margin, return rates, suitable for e-com, scalable across large enough markets, not too seasonal, long enough life cycle, and just won't, go viral in Norway. And when you sell 100K SEK per day of that product, you just can't scale it anymore. These sorts of criteria. And when you look at it that way, you start seeing these risks. Okay, Ben, what is then a risk? What if we hire someone who's ex-Acne Studios? I love Acne Studios, by the way. Let's not put any hate on them. But someone who's ex-Acne Studios, who's like super duper product dev artist, who develops these crazy nice looking jeans for retail with 0% stretch in the waist. What's the return rate going to be on those for e-com? Are these products developed for e-com? We're still living in a world where Ninepine is competing with a bunch of retail heritage brands that are taking existing product dev processes, not optimized for e-com, and taking their retail assortment and trying to sell it online and sit there and complain about their 47% return rates. What did you expect?
It almost sounds like you're applying an internal playbook on everything you do.
Yeah. I mean, it's also we think a little bit differently. So since we're not from the traditional design, fashion backgrounds, as Kousha mentioned, when I was interviewing designers and, you had these people from esteemed companies, it was really interesting to see how they worked in these legacy companies because it was not the way we wanted to work. And our designer, super talented and worked for some of these great Swedish brands, was quite taken by surprise by how we worked and how involved we were in the design of the products and what we would select. And even if the product was beautiful and amazing, we could still cut it with no hard feelings. But it's also the fact that we have a team for example, we have a team in Vietnam, in Ninepine, who helps us with both the quality control, but also the product development sourcing, because it's all about this quick turnaround. We don't have to live by any wholesalers. We have our own rules, but we have an idea of we want to launch stuff quick. How do we do that? Well, we take it from tech. Like we do sprints, we do product sprints. We go to Asia and we spend like a week or two just hardcore fittings. We have the sewing room right next door, and we're just making changes here and there. If we need expertise from a tailor, we'll bring them in. It's a little bit different, I think, from how other companies do it, having like HQ and here and the legacy way, perhaps.
And it shaped what that part of the business looks like, right? As soon as Ben and I realized, okay, this is an area where we need to ramp it up, either hire someone, do something. We look at that area and we're like, are we looking to bring on competence we don't have? Or are we looking to cut our efforts out in that area? If it's finance admin, you're probably hiring someone to minimize your own effort in that area. In this case, one of the surprises for our designer was we brought her on board, but that was not to minimize Ben's effort in that area. That was to bring her on, test her, figure out if she's open enough and humble enough to understand that, look, I'm a killer designer. I'm really good at this stuff. However, Ninepine has a very different perspective on what this product looks like. I can't create this seam like this, even though it makes the pant 10% better, because the risk of screwing up this seam is too high when we produce 40,000 of them at a time. That's a different perspective than many companies who sort of detach that arm of the business from the overall, business model, I would say.
I think this is maybe so far the most interesting part in our conversation. And what this means to me is, 5-10 years ago, they spoke about digital first brands like Casper, but to me, this seems like digital only. And by that, I mean, number one, you do not only understand the P&L, what drives what, and you do not only understand, supply chain and marketing and all that stuff, but everything that you do is adopted towards the digital landscape. Even if you open a physical store, which you by the way have on Kungsgatan, and maybe more stores, I don't know, let's talk about that soon. I assume everything you do is to improve the digital landscape.
The digital impact, conversion rate wise, of opening a store was what made us pull the trigger on that lease for that store.
Let's talk about that then. So you have the store in Kungsgatan. It's quite small. I've seen it from the outside a few times. How many square meters is it?
55.
How much do you pay rent every month?
I think 600K per year, pre-taxes and stuff.
All right. How much revenues do you make in that store every year?
On a good month, about $1 million.
Okay. So it's profitable.
Yeah, like 50%.
So you get insane profitability in the store. What does the physical store on Kungsgatan do for your digital ecosystem in Stockholm where the store is present?
Let's put it like this. It does enough for us to not bother measuring it anymore.
And how much is that?
We don't know. But it's more than the rent. I would say there is a benefit in terms of credibility. I think it really comes from the first store. The ROI is best on the first store because that's what you can put on the website and here and there. It looks flashy. Second, it does make it feel more legit when we have meetings, potential tech partners for stuff we can add to Shopify. It makes us feel more legitimate. I think it helps us in small things like negotiating with the bank. Oh, they have a store on Kungsgatan. This kind of stuff where, there's still a bunch of, not in a bad way, but traditional mindset decision makers that we need on our side. So from that perspective, the first store, fantastic. Do we want to add more stores? Yes. What hinders us? The opportunity cost of the mind space, the effort. Hiring is very difficult. We have had the chance of having fantastic store managers. One's on maternity leave, but the interim one also fantastic. We have no headaches around the store, thanks to them. Fantastic store team. I can't take any credit for that. So it's great to have the store. Like even if the store did these numbers, but we'd had a lot of headaches with the staff, we would be having a very different conversation right now. But the store as a no-brainer in terms of bringing enough ROI, as long as it breaks even, in my opinion, it is a no-brainer because it gives you so much brand credibility. We also see very clearly that the store revenue is directly correlated to our ad spend in Sweden, right? We only have a physical store in Sweden right now. If we have a certain product that goes viral-ish over a certain period of time, and we increase our ad spend in Sweden, even if that product is not available in the store yet, the foot traffic goes up, the sales go up in the store. It's an awareness game.
But I think it's not a no-brainer because the first year was tough. It wasn't profitable in the first year. And especially in the winter months, people don't go out so much, and we had zero retail experience. I mean, I worked in a store when I was a student, but that didn't give me any managerial skills. Doesn't count. Even how do we even manage the warehouse under the store? We had no idea. But the first year was a struggle. It was about how do we get foot traffic? And I think one of the things when I look back at when we signed the lease, again, as Kousha said, it was purely for conversion rate optimization in my head. Of course, there's a little ego boost, but it is a CVR focus, which is probably a little bit different. And the thing was, okay, Kungsgatan, oh yeah, there's like some nice outdoor brands, but is it really a shopping destination? Has it actually become a shopping destination still? I mean, if you ask a layman, maybe, but in my eyes, people work there. People eat there on their lunch breaks. But if you go on the weekend to Drottninggatan, that is a shopping, Mall of Scandinavia is a shopping destination. And especially the layout of the store, like for example, we didn't think about it. I mean, I didn't think about it in the beginning, but we actually have 3 steps and a heavy door that we're not allowed to keep open, technically. And that's a pretty big friction, right? I understand why you have these, stores that have the electronic automatic doors, the red carpet rolled out, and the signs. It makes a difference. But from our zero experience, we didn't know. But we managed to overcome that through learnings.
And it's interesting. It took a year until the store was profitable. So I guess that was a mental bet you guys had to make during that year. Should we keep the store? Should we not keep the store? And then the follow-up question is obviously, what does the lease look like? Because sometimes you sign it for 2 years, sometimes 5 years, sometimes 5 + 5 years. This can be negotiated. And it sounds like you also negotiated in this in a post-COVID climate. So I assume it was quite easy to get quite good terms for that contract. So what did the lease signing process look like, and what's in the contract?
Like we're building a long-term business for real. I'm not just saying that. Like we're building it. We signed 3 years right away, and I don't think we would have been afraid if it was 5. We were confident about the impact that it would have online. And sure, it sucks that it couldn't be profitable standalone. Even today, let's say we stop advertising online. I don't know if the store is profitable standalone. It's not like we have random foot traffic, people walking past and are like, oh my God, look at those blue joggers, I would say if you read the reviews, the Google reviews on Google Maps from our store, I think it's 200 and something reviews right now. If you scroll down to the last one, you're going to find at least 20, 30 of them being tourists who know Ninepine from the Netherlands, from Finland, from just a bunch of countries that visit Stockholm from time to time. These are our customers. Some of them go to the store because they're not comfortable shopping online yet. That's why the demographic in the store is slightly older than our average online. And a lot of people go to the store because they feel it's mandatory to visit the Ninepine store because they've been buying our stuff for so long and they love it. And to us, that was the first sense of like, apart from when people rant about us on forums and defend us, and on like, where we were not involved ourselves, the store was the first proper piece of proof that like, wow, we're building a community if people are here defending us against trolls and stuff. We're just looking.
And I think one of the interesting takeaways here is the commitment, because honestly, how many founders go and read all freaking reviews, not only for the online store, but also for the physical store until the absolute last one to understand what does the customer think, what do they like, what do they not like. So this kind of commitment says a lot of things, I think. I also wonder, like, how complex was it to set up the store? I was on stage for this giant fashion company somewhere in the world. I'm not going to say the name. And they were asking me about the complexity of establishing a store and like the setting up the payment things and, how complex was it? Or did you just use the Shopify stuff to fix that?
It's not rocket science. It's not. But then again, there are areas where you could, you can do it 100% or you can do it sort of quick and dirty. Ninepine does a lot of things 90%, 80%. In terms of just renovations, setting it up, that's a lot of, it's a money question. We don't like overspending. So that was a challenge, trying to make it look the part without overspending.
A lot of fake marble.
Veneer. Yeah. But we actually got a lot of help, I guess. We spoke to different founders from the Stockholm D2C scene, and a lot of them were actually pretty open to how the businesses, the retail went and what to look out for. The fit outs, obviously, were inspired by some luxury brands, and how can we incorporate that in a more approachable way? Because that was one of the biggest challenges for our store, because we want to give this high-end, luxury-ish kind of look, yet we don't want it to be so cold and uninviting that people will be scared to go in and have to think, I have to be dressed so nicely to go in, which I still feel sometimes in many stores, right? So how do we make it welcoming, how do you do the fit out in an economic way? The payments was actually a bit of a headache, to be honest. You mentioned Shopify, like, we use Shopify point of sales, and, Sweden isn't a massive focus, I guess, for them compared to the US and Germany maybe. And I think we were promised the hardware over and over for the card thing, and that never came. And I guess they've done a whole restructuring, and but I think it's coming. And so we've had to do a little kind of hack, which is a little bit inconvenient for our store team. It is a hassle in terms of when you input into the iPad. Most customers don't complain. So,
but yeah, you want a good card reader.
You want a good card reader that doesn't break down. But I think the biggest challenge is the people aspect, because we're so used to working from our little battle stations and coordinating things, and then you have to deal with a roster and people, they have lives and they get sick or they have activities, and we can't open the store on a Saturday. That's a different challenge.
Yeah, interesting. But it still sounds like, you're not a big ass team. You said you have 2 million euros in revenues per employee. So I guess time is limited, and still pulling off a store opening, it says it all, that you basically, you did what you needed, but you didn't do much more because you just wanted to get it out there and launch the store basically. I would also like to talk about product pricing a little bit. How often do you change the prices of the products on the store?
Not too often.
And how did you pick the price you want to charge for that specific product?
It differs a bit across the product range. If it's a driver or if it's an upsell, that changes a lot, right? If it's something that's purely there to increase your AOV, but it's not a product that has enough pushability or virality potential for you to drive demand with it, it becomes less important, especially if it's lightweight and doesn't add a lot of logistics cost if it's added to your order, right? So for those, you would price it to maximize the likelihood of the person buying pant X, let's say, adding this upsell, and therefore you'd be willing to take a lower gross margin. However, if you're trying to create a star product, or if it's going to become a part of, the items that you use to generate profitable traffic to your site, you need to price it so that your gross margin allows your expected cost per acquisition. And this is where the only estimate, it's a difficult estimate to make, but the only estimate here that you need to make is, at scale, what is my cost per acquisition that I'm willing to take for this product? Is it a high LTV product? Then yeah, we can take a high cost per acquisition because it's going to pay off. If it's a medium or low LTV product, then we need to be profitable on the first purchase to reach our whatever we have as our EBIT goal, right? And so this is really the way we think. And if we have a product that we believe has a CPA of 300 SEK and we can charge 1,000 for it, then that means advertising. If we have an average order of one item, advertising would be 30% of revenue. Then there's returns and stuff as well. But you get my point.
How do you measure LTV on a product basis? And LTV is, for those who don't know, lifetime value for each and every product.
So, one, we have analytics where we can look at our cohorts and see people who bought product X as the first item. What is the likelihood of them coming back within 3 months, within 6 months? How much more do they spend? Does this product give them enough confidence in Ninepine as a business that they buy everything we launch? So we see these on the different products. And we make very conscious choices here. Sometimes we push a product that has a higher first time, CPA, purely because we know that, we have a lower margin on it, but people who buy this, they spend 300% more in the coming 12 months.
But you pull the data manually and then you ask ChatGPT or something, or is there a tool in Shopify that you install and then you can...
These are pre-built Shopify reports. These are basic analytics in Shopify.
Where in Shopify?
Under analytics.
Perfect.
And reports.
And reports, yeah.
And we were talking about how you price the products, and it sounds like you have a very strategic approach towards that, meaning, a lifetime value on a product basis. The second question about this is, how do you categorize the products? I'm not thinking in terms of, socks versus some other category, but do you have different purposes for different product categories? You're saying that you have categories that are driving profitability or lifetime value, and you have other products that are, upselling, cross-selling, etc. So what kind of categories do you have internally in your mindset when you develop products?
It's a very good question. I would say it comes down to the ambition for the coming year or 2 years. I think if you look at a long horizon, we're open to the assortment developing as long as it's under the umbrella of the luxury of comfort. That's what Ninepine is, right? And you can fit a lot into the luxury of comfort, but it still has to make sense with our business model. The different categories we would have is sometimes you launch something, for example, a new color of a bestseller. You're expecting that to be a cross-sell product, but then it turns out that color is quite good for prospecting incrementally because there is a clique that don't want to buy black pants, right? Believe it or not. No, I'm kidding. But they exist. And you could, you know, these products can jump back and forth between these categories. But I think when we get to the size where we are right now, and if we want to continue to be able to acquire customers very profitably, to add more customers every single day, new customers, first-time customers, at the rate we are doing right now, we need to expand our product development into different enough other categories when it comes to the prospecting. We are more concerned with and focused on launching relevant, pushable bestsellers to acquire new customers with, because as long as we do that with good products, it's not easy, but it's easier to, parallel to this initiative, launch good upsell stuff to your existing customer base, more colors of their favorite stuff, etc. Does that make sense?
So we're looking for like we're trying to sell the ice cream on the hot sunny day. That's what Ninepine is. We're trying to find that ice cream every single day. And I guess we can break it down into a few kind of tiers. I wouldn't say it's the A, B, C, D, kind of is the same thing, but A tier would be the star products, right? The stuff that gets the customers in. It's like the makeup for these luxury brands. That's like the entry product. Then you have the second category, the B. They're great products. They can be pushable, but they don't compete with A as well, but they're still good to have. Then we have the C category, which is I say experimental categories of products and ranges. And I work actively in that part. That's like, okay, are these product categories going to end up in the B pile, in the A pile, or discarded altogether? And then, of course, we have the accessories and stuff, which it's nice to have and doesn't take much brain focus. But I think in the last year or two, a lot of focus has been on this experimental, I won't call them moonshots, but high potential things.
And maybe let's talk about supply chain then, because now we're touching on that topic a little bit. So Ben, you're the head of supply chain internally, and you were speaking about the mega fast sprints. You're producing in China, I think?
Not very much, actually.
Okay, where are you producing?
Mainly in Vietnam.
All right. And why Vietnam?
That's a very good question. And so our main suppliers are actually mostly European owned, actually. I think, I don't want to go into geopolitics or anything, but especially during COVID, I guess the world saw, supply chain issues, the shipping containers, lockdowns in particular countries. And when we're looking, this kind of goes back to gross margin as well. Like, where can we produce goods of super high quality, world class, yet still maintain a high gross margin? So look, we did explore Europe, and Europe is expensive. Labor is more expensive, of course. And then we asked ourselves, are they better? Maybe in some things. I could be completely wrong. But, I mean, why is Patagonia and Nike and stuff, why are they producing in Vietnam? Everything is being made there. And then, or like Turkey, for example. And then, of course, like with free trade agreements with Vietnam and Europe, obviously that helps. And then we kind of looked, okay, where do we have free trade agreements in the world? Yeah, these countries. And we just landed in Vietnam. It was one prospect of many, and we do use different countries too. And the fact that our main suppliers, have roots in Europe, and it makes doing business so much easier in terms of transparency, trust. They understand our business. We try to learn their business. And I think one thing that we did very differently when we first met suppliers, me and Kousha pitched Ninepine to these suppliers as if it was like an investment meeting. Because essentially they are investing in us.
We still do.
And we still do. And Vietnam is you know yourself, like it's hard to get in because it's a smaller country than China. The infrastructure isn't as big, and there are less people, so there's a lot higher MOQs, and there are complexities there too. And I guess there's less shipping routes than from China. It makes sense. So that's how we landed there. We're pretty happy, and I guess we're going back pretty soon.
Yeah.
Can you walk me through the product sprint? So let's say you have a product sprint scheduled for November this year. And what do you do ahead of the product sprint?
That is a lot of planning. So we never go to our suppliers like with completely fresh tech packs on that trip, physical trip. Because the aim of the trips is to finalize products so they're ready to go to production. Pre-production samples, I guess we all like clap and laugh when I use this pen and like say approved, and the whole office goes applause and everyone laughs. Approved is our golden word. So just say we're doing a trip to say November. We need to make sure our planning for like, just say we're planning for the more warm weather stuff is all done on the high level side. So Kousha, me, designer, and the team. Okay, these are the products we want to develop and try to at least sample. And then of course the tech packs, nothing different there. And then hopefully we have a few rounds of samples sent to us in Stockholm first. And we have a bunch of great fitting models. But then some items, especially the tailoring, pants, skirts, can be quite tricky. And we want to refine them there. So for example, on our next trip, I think we have a list of 20 plus products. And then we schedule it so as soon as we land, we go straight to the office and start fitting. We have live fitting models, we have mannequins. And then, like sometimes it takes the sample room a day or two to like make the adjustments if it's like a massive adjustment. But if it's like taking up the sleeve, then they can do it within a minute.
So it sounds like you already have samples done before you go to Vietnam.
Yeah, we have to. I mean, otherwise you lose so much time. It's because the first round very rarely is a success. But then also we need to make sure that the suppliers have the necessary trims and fabrics, blah blah blah, like in the sample room ready, and that the sample room staff are like ready for these designs so they can act quick.
How many product sprints per year do you make?
Our goal is to have 2. Since like we're not in fast fashion and we don't produce products like so rapidly. Mainly it's just ideas and then we want to launch. But I think 2 is a healthy number.
So it sounds like you're making the tech packs in Stockholm, you're sampling the first round, you get the samples to the office, and you feedback the samples ahead of the Vietnam trip. Then you go to Vietnam and develop the samples until the final product is done during that trip by having basically everybody that is needed for the product sprint.
Yeah, so I think, look, the beauty of this is we actually take our designer there. We fly together, we hang out. It's a great bonding period. I think it's also quite unique, right, that we bring the designer. And our designer, she's never done this before with her other work brands. And it's also great for the designer to understand the production perspective beyond the tech pack, and meet the technical designers on their side, to meet the pattern makers, to meet the sample room, so that she can really empathize and they can empathize with the way she makes feedback. Because I guess one of the first learnings was like there is miscommunication. And look, they are in a different country and they have different standards to like how we want things sewn or how things should fit. For example, they may look at a jacket that's A-frame and be like, oh, that looks a bit odd, because maybe they're more into like the slim things. And I think it's quite a lot of learnings there. But yeah, so I guess our next trip is going to be about 6-7 days of like full-time product and visiting some new suppliers and sourcing.
Do you do any digital rendering and how do you involve the community when doing product development?
Great question. Really good question. I guess I've been down the rabbit hole of the digital rendering thing and the community aspect. So let's start off with the rendering part, since that was the first. Look, Clo 3D is a pretty newish, trendy type of digital product that some people use to make these digital avatars, and then you upload the pattern, and then it kind of renders it. I've looked into it, and some people have a specialty in it. We don't work with it actively, and neither do our main suppliers, because I think it may add value, but how it falls physically is the most important thing. Because sometimes I'm not sure how good it can, pick up these like small little issues in the crotch or fitting and the comfort. I guess a live model is always maybe a bit better than the 3D rendering. So it's something we're looking at, but it's not a huge priority for us. And hopefully it will make life a lot easier. But of course we do illustrations in Adobe AI and stuff. So the usual tech pack stuff we do. In terms of the community aspect and how we get feedback on product improvements, I mean, Kousha did talk about this before. So we always do V1s or betas, if you want to call it, of products. Low MOQs that our factory has kindly, accepted, because they understand this is part of the business and how we work. So we do a V1, and then we have the criteria, we have the business criterias, but then we have the product criteria in terms of, actual reviews, and return rates is a proxy of that. Exchanges, that's also a proxy of like, okay, there's some issues. And quite often we common issues will arise. For example, if it's too wide in the hips or too short here, too long there. Usually we can capture that pretty quickly in the review section. If there's a lot of reviews, you can look at it manually. If there's a few reviews, you can look at it manually. If it's a lot, you can put that into LLM, large language model, if you want. Usually you don't need to. And then we kind of go back to the drawing board with our designer and ask, okay, this product was kick ass, but how do we, reduce the return rate from, say, 20 to 14? We think, we have a hypothesis that it's doable. And then we get to it. Like our last trip to Vietnam, we did exactly this. We had a product that was, it worked okay from the pushability standpoint. Return rates were okay. There was some people, a minority, who had an issue. And then when I saw that issue in real life, I was like, oh, that's an issue. And then sometimes getting to the bottom of it, that is the relationship between us and the supplier and the technical designers on their side. So usually we would have like specific meetings about it, really, like, hey, there's an issue with a crotch here, like, how do we fix it? And then we have ideas, and sometimes we just do prototypes, not the whole pant. Like, okay, if it's like a collar, for example, we'll just do prototypes of the collar and get down to it. And then we launch the V2, and hopefully with some lag, Kousha will be like, Ben, we've reduced the return rate.
What's the minimums for the V1?
In terms of quantity?
Yeah.
I mean, it's changed over time.
There are actual numbers that are said and written by the factories, but when you are large enough, you have enough bargaining power to kind of decide.
50.
Oh, no.
200.
We wouldn't do that to them, but a few hundred we could bring it down to if we had to. But then again, what is the probability of you getting actual data on a few hundred? You know what I mean?
Yeah, makes sense.
You the first few hundred will sell to your existing customer base. You will have zero data on pushability and CPAs.
Yeah, but it sounds like when you launch a new product, you apply some risk management towards that process. So you only launch minimum order quantities where you get, I don't know how you say in English, statistiskt significant data.
We call it stat-sig.
Stat-sig.
Which probably is 200 or 300 or so. Then you look at the reviews of the products plus the return system, which is for you guys.
We are onboarding on a new platform right now.
All right.
And that's not live yet.
But there you get, obviously, data points
Some data points.
What's wrong with the fit. So you get to understand exactly why the customer is returning the product. Then you can implement that into the second version of the product.
And we see it in the store as well, because the store, of course, you have many people with different body types and heights trying the product. And I think that's also one of the difficult things when you're making apparel, as you would know, that it fits differently on different people. I mean, Kousha and I, we wear the same brands and they just fit so differently on us. And we have different preferences as well.
And that's why you have fit models, right? So you don't invent the standard of the world when it comes to fitting, but you just adopt to the industry standard that is there. Like Google, you don't reinvent how people search for information on the internet, right?
But in our case, we, one of these filters are like, does the product then match their expectations in terms of material, in terms of fit? Can we use the model that will have the highest conversion rate on the product page without having sky-high returns on a product that is likely to only fit medium-sized people or slim people, etc.? So that's one. I also want to add another filter to it, and that is we launch everything with the mindset of this becoming part of our never out-of-stock assortment. We have never so far, and I find it fairly unlikely that we ever will, I don't think so at least, in the near future, launch something that is just seasonal and there to disappear. And that it's important to keep that in mind when we look at the feedback and when we look at the return rates and the reviews. We also need to see like, okay, is this doable? yeah, we could push it, but if the returns are high, then, you know, is it likely that we can bring it down? Is it super obvious what the problem was? If it's not, is it worth the effort? What's the opportunity cost of this versus developing this other product, for example?
How do you do the math for purchasing? Because you want to have obviously statistically driven purchasing decision making, and you want to forecast when a product that is a top seller will sell out, so you can restock that product instantly thereafter. So do you have any, IT platforms helping out there, or do you do everything in Google Sheets, or how does that work for you guys?
In terms of product inventory management, traditionally, Kousha and I have had a weekly, I guess, part of the all hands really, that we do a quick analysis, and a lot of it, as Kousha said, a lot of our business is 90% done. Done is better than perfect, and back of the envelope Google Sheets type things. It's only quite recently that we've onboarded a SaaS platform that will help us, but there's so many limits. It's Madden. And I mean, there's a plethora of different ones, and some are American, and this one's Swedish, which is nice with integrations. Yet there are so many challenges. I mean, especially with Kousha, I mean, you can explain maybe the forecasting challenges.
Yeah, I mean, the thing with analytics, this is about inventory, but in general, analytics, like if you overdo it, you run the risk of looking too much at a certain factor and you can miss other things. You might be launching something, the system could tell you, yeah, you should stock this much because it's a fantastic product. But then it turns out that product was really selling in a very small market. And it doesn't understand. It looks at the forecast of your overall business revenue when it gives you the prediction for that product. So there are many other things that, it's super valuable just doing the back of the envelope as well. And if this is a process that you want to outsource, or you want to hire someone to become an expert at looking at this data, one of the good things about Ninepine, which I think future-proofs us, is we take the fine parts of back in the day, or a couple months ago, when we were still doing weekly meetings, just looking at our inventory and deciding what to order. We take those things. For example, okay, yeah, it seems super pushable, but which markets? Is this flying in Germany? Yeah, let's listen to it. Let's restock a lot. Is this flying in Finland? Maybe let's not restock a lot of this one. And putting that into the wiki that explains the process for this new, whoever it is, analytics person that's going to make these decisions going forward, will give us an edge compared to other businesses that would purely rely on the predictions and data in this sense.
All right, so you're not only making a forecast for each product, but you're also putting a layer of demographics behind each and every product to understand whether they're flying on a big market or on a small market. And if it's a big market like Germany or the US, then you're more confident in buying that product, or buying the product in bigger volumes.
That could be one. It could also be perhaps a product is using a material where the material cost is very volatile. Do we want to invest that much in it and risk, adding a few 100,000 new customers on a product that creates their idea of what your brand is, and then if you restock it, you need to increase the price by 40% and your pushability disappears? There are many things here that are it's common business sense. But if you're too concerned with and too detailed in your analytics and the numbers, you'll forget to apply just common business sense.
And you have one meeting a week about purchasing. So every week you make another decision about what products to purchase. It sounds like you're purchasing quite often over the years. So you have 2 product sprints per year, but it sounds like you're purchasing almost every week.
We're not placing the orders every week, but we're trying to continuously keep track of which product's flying where, why, how's the marketing cost per product driving an order, increasing or decreasing, etc.
So how often do you do purchasing then?
Ben, you're better equipped to answer this. It's a bit more sporadic or needs determined. But
It's needs determined. So we have the structure of like how we work. We just onboarded a great CEO who also Johannes, who spearheads this part of the business now actually with us. And we have a all hands meeting. So, top management. I mean, the main core people who make decisions. We sit in this meeting. It's a very active working meeting, and we have everything. We begin with finances, and then marketing, content, logistics, purchasing is part of this. So it's like a whole 360 of the business. And this is a super, that's how we start the week with the all hands. How often do the purchases happen? I don't know, once a month, every few weeks. It really depends on the supplier and the demand and supply of the products.
To some extent, it also depends if it's a bestseller, if it's something that is a significant part of our revenue and we can't afford being out of stock, or we can't afford missing an opportunity where there's a lot of tailwind on a product, it's likely that that's a product that we keep never out of stock fabrics for. If that's the case, the lead times are significantly shorter, meaning you could order way closer into, like you can make the decision closer to when you need them, right? Which, once again, it makes it more likely that we can continue being a jet ski.
Who owns the ultimate decision making for purchasing?
Consensus.
Very Swedish answer.
Well, it's true.
It's like the worst way to do it.
Yeah, I mean, look, historically, I mean, this is no like nothing flashy. I would send over, when we were using Sheets, I would send over my calculations and the purchase order in the Excel and in a matrix. It was quite an arduous, inefficient way I was doing it before, with exporting the data, historical data. But I'll send it over to Kousha for just a fact check or like a sense check. Usually, there was consensus, and sometimes, we're launching X, and then that's going to cannibalize in September or November, whatever. And then maybe we should just pull it down. Cool. There's no real like fight there. And I think one of the great things for both of us and the company is that we're not ultimately the people wearing the clothes. Well, my wife wears it, and so does your partner, but we're not wearing it. And that removes quite a lot of personal bias, and sometimes without a designer and like the people in our team who like love product X or Y, and we see why they love it and we get it, but we still kill it because of business sense.
How do you guys improve the likelihood of, from an idea, a product that you believe in will be a top seller to become a top seller? So how do you improve the likelihood of creating top selling items?
I mean, improve the likelihood of creating them. The better or the more accurately we can make these assumptions as to why we believe this item is pushable, the more likely it is that it turns out to be pushable, right? It's more difficult now that we have some size, because we can get enough data, stat sig data, on return rates and long-term profitability of that product against our existing customer base. So we need to launch stuff. We need to sell it off enough to our loyal fans and then start finding new customers, hopefully in big markets, with that product before we can start looking at, okay, this is the exchange rate and the return rate from a person who owns nothing else from Ninepine. So that's one. Second, if we've had products where we wanted to force that product into becoming a bestseller. And most of the time, I would say, it's not worth the effort. It is not worth it, because something else that flies, you should just listen to it. And not anymore, but earlier it could be like, yeah, but my girlfriend really thinks this dress is, it. And subconsciously, you just really want that dress to fly. Or you have a product that the gross margin is great on and the returns are low, but the CPA is sky high. And you're like, if we had 800 reviews on this one, it would fly. And you just overinvest in it. But the opportunity cost is almost always too high. There is another product that would fly. And that's probably where you should spend the effort.
And that's the biggest challenge when you're not working with fast fashion. So I understand fast fashion houses and the quick turnaround from the runway to the stores. You get the report, it's pink, it's hot, it's Barbie, and then you see pink everywhere. And we don't work with those type of short-term, quick turnaround trends. So it is a huge challenge to find the next thing. But I think what we can do to combat this challenge and improve the probability that we will find the next thing is the process. It's a system. It is the accumulation of how we work with our design team, the planning, and then the sprints, so we get it as quickly as possible out. And look, we are by no means as good as like the fast fashion houses in pumping out product. We're not that, but it's they have a very, very efficient process. And I think one of the aha moments was when you went, was it Hoi An in Vietnam?
Probably.
Yeah, when Kousha, he told me when I was in Australia, he went traveling and he got a. Should I tell it? You tell it. Maybe you tell it.
Hoi An. Yeah, the process. Yeah.
I think you should tell it. That's a good story.
So, one year when Ben was in Australia. This was last year, wasn't it?
It was last
year.
recently.
Yeah, when Ben was in Australia. Normally, when Ben is in Australia, I try to go to Asia, so we're in a similar time zone because we need to be able to reach each other sometimes for a decision. It's just more convenient, right? And I was in Hoi An, and I was like, well, I mean, I'm gonna be here for like 8-9 days, so I might as well just get a bunch of suits and shirts and stuff done. It's quite cheap. They're really good at it. And I went there on the scooter in my swim trunks, and I got a suit tailor-made. And they were very Ninepine-esque in their way of working. Super quick and dirty. Measurement, this, that. I was bloated. I had a bunch of, gluten. All these measurements, super quick, said come back in 12 hours. Okay, I went back, 9 p.m. I went back there. It was done. Pretty much done. It was 80% done. It was like our V2-ish. V1, V2. Okay, they make new measurements, blah, blah. Come back tomorrow morning. Okay, 11 a.m. I go back 11 a.m., V2. Do you want to make some more quick fixes? Yeah, okay, fix this. Went back 4 p.m. It was done. And I was like, well, I mean, look, it's not like these guys have the product dev budget of Ninepine. And I don't know what the working conditions and stuff were. I have no idea, but it seems pretty good. I went to a legit tailor, right? But I was like, if they're doing it, we should be able to build something like this. I'm not going to try to build a Zara, from idea to Stockholm store in 2 weeks. But it shouldn't be 3 months, right? It definitely shouldn't be 6 months from a test, feedback loop to scaling, especially if we have never out of stock fabrics, and then being able to scale with this product. So that inspired us a lot when it came to developing this process in terms of rapid prototyping, the feedback loop. So it's relevant to know in this context that when we go to Vietnam for the sprint, it's not a V1 that we got a sample from. We're already at V4 before even launching the product. Product is an area where, maybe the only area where Ninepine's philosophy is not done is better than perfect. We need these products to be good. If this product is going to have the potential to be 60% of our revenue across a few months, 1 percentage point difference in return rates, it's a lot of money. So that inspired us. We do these sprints from like V4 and onwards, and we can make 6-7 new variants. So when we launch our V1 towards the customer, in reality, that's like V10.
That's inspiring. Do you tell that story to your producers when you visit them to put some pressure on them?
Which one? The Hoi An one?
Yeah.
We did, and we were developing relevant products, and on the spot, one of the managers in the office got on their scooter and went and picked up a tailor and brought him back to our session that day, and we were able to finalize multiple items thanks to bringing on an experienced tailor from outside.
It was a really cool experience because, look, the sample room and the technicians, I mean, they are all-rounders. But when it comes to tailoring certain garments, well, you need expertise. And then one of the people had a friend, the one that you mentioned, and he came in, like, he was wearing, like, these super cool glasses, and he was, like, just this super cool dude, like, straight out of Soda Mom type. And he just came in, and he had his, like, measuring tape, and he was just, like, pinching here and there. He just knew exactly what to fix on the jackets and pants. Pretty inspiring to see. But I guess that's, that kind of birthed the whole sprint idea. And so far, it's been quite successful.
And it's interesting because now we've been talking, I guess, 1.5 hours or something, and we haven't even been touching on marketing properly. And I think one of the big-ass takeaways here as well is there is so much more to a business than marketing only, because Ninepine, to me, before we met the first time at this Clear event, was like a pure marketing meta ads machinery. But there is so much more to it, and we spent quite some time now on supply chain because it's so freaking important for the business that we run, right? But let us now deep dive into the topic that everybody has been waiting for, which is meta ads. Maybe we should whisper, because it's going to be quite a few secrets here. Quite a few.
I wish. If anyone has any secrets, find me on LinkedIn and share them, please.
Kousha, maybe you can give us the playbook of meta in Q3, Q4, 2024.
Playbook. I would say this. We don't think about this as performance marketing. I've come across so many businesses now talking about this as like, oh, could you have a meeting with our performance person in charge of acquisition on digital channels and this and that? We really see this for what it is, which is this is algorithm-based advertising, just general advertising. If you are doing a big outdoor campaign and you have posters to put up on bus stops, you are likely to put those posters where your target customers is likely to be, or hang out, or pass by, right? It's a demographic game. The only thing that these algos do now is they allow you to reach the right people on these digital platforms if you play the game right. And playing the game right used to be super granular setups and all these advanced agencies, and you had to have, I don't want to name drop a bunch, but all these big agencies that do these ultra granular setups for you, and they report on them and they show you that this lookalike audience or this custom audience that came from this URL that has Google Click ID who searched for soft underwear, you should retarget them with this type of blah, blah, blah. And now as a consequence, today, we have a bunch of businesses who don't even have the in-house capacity or infrastructure to pump out their own content at the pace necessary, and still they're talking about full funnel advertising. What I'm trying to say with this is focus on understanding, what my tip would be then, focus on understanding how these algos work. They're probability-based algorithms. They map out people's behaviors, simple behavioral economics. They map out demographics, and they try to understand who bought your product historically through tracking on your website and through the performance of your ads. And then they try to find similar people who have a high probability of purchasing. And if you have good content and a high enough conversion rate so that it thinks you are targeting the right people, you're more likely to reach those people with your ads. It's not much more complicated than that.
So if you take 100% of the performance marketing game, so this is basically, for everybody watching on YouTube, this is 100% of the efforts you do in performance marketing internally. How many percent of those 100% in terms of like importance or impact is what you do within Facebook Ads Manager?
As in the setup?
Yeah.
20% maybe?
And does that include the follow-up, all the data analytics you do in there, etc.?
I mean, the vast majority of the analysis that is being done in order to target the right person the right amount of times per week, these are done by automated models.
Exactly. And
this
that
is like machine learning. It's not me.
No, exactly. And that is the algorithm that has developed over time. So today it's automated. And before you had to target Tesla owners manually because you thought that I can sell my lamp to Tesla owners because it's similar design or lifestyle or whatever. And you don't have to do that anymore. But what is the remaining 80% then?
It goes back to the processes. It goes back to building an infrastructure internally where you can, as soon as you see this type of content seems to work, how fast can you pump out variants of that? How relevant is that for the type of brand you want to build? How well can you create ads that drive demand and curiosity, but align enough with what you're actually selling? So you're aligning the expectation with the reality. How well can you build this ad so that it captures attention and brings people to a landing page where they are still likely to convert? A big part of how these systems will score the relevance of your ad when deciding to show your ad or Ninepine's ad or someone else's ad to a person is, what is the probability of this person taking action and then feeling that this was, a good decision when I bought this product? So it goes very much to, for example, websites. Do you have enough data to A/B test that product page? Because if the revenue per visitor or the conversion rate per visitor just goes up on your site, you're probably doing something right. It doesn't naturally just go up because you became more granular in your targeting. It could be good for 1 or 2 days, but it's not scalable. And just to put this in perspective, when I left Facebook and we decided to go all in into our own business, Ninepine, I was afraid that something could happen and I couldn't, keep taking my salary, and I had a mortgage and stuff. So I set up a little consulting firm on the side, and I was selling my time and just consulting other businesses. As a consequence, there are maybe 100 businesses, Stockholm-based or Sweden-based today, that have almost identical setups to Ninepine because I built them. There you have it. That is not the secret.
All right. So 20% is what you actually do and execute in Ads Manager. It sounds like 30% is the website itself, the ecosystem of the website, including building trust and testing and
product pictures, everything above the fold, everything above the cart button, everything below the fold.
The hotjar.com stuff, basically.
Yeah,
with
we
heat
don't.
maps and stuff.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, we don't personally use those, and we've, speaking for Kousha here, but we've both kind of deep dived into the science or perceived science of conversion rate optimization, and there are some Swedish companies who do like a phenomenal job, and that we also look up to, and some are just plain product pages. But there are some very sophisticated things you can do. It can be based on actual behavior. on the website. If you're someone who clicks a size guide, that probably puts you into a bucket of someone who's interested in the details and maybe close to the purchase, and then you may get fed something different below the add to cart button if you keep scrolling. So there's so much more than just the ads and the setup, as Kousha mentioned.
You also have this massive, and I think this is something people don't really realize, or business owners and marketers don't realize, which is a lot of, especially PE, have this massive misconception that after you've acquired a customer, after that, the CPA for that customer is zero. You just pay Klaviyo monthly and then you send them emails and then, you have them. That's not the case. Coca-Cola is the biggest advertiser in the world. They're not advertising to people who haven't tested Coca-Cola before, right? Haven't tried it. It's the same thing here. Like if you sell good stuff and you're trying to achieve a snowball effect for your business because you're focusing on LTV and you're selling good stuff, you're optimizing for lower return rates, better customer happiness, etc. Ultimately, what will happen is when you launch new stuff and when you keep advertising, of course, these algorithms will reach existing customers. And if you go in and you start making these massive exclusions and I don't want to reach people who bought from me in the last 120 days and blah, 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 you need to be aware that you are limiting a very sophisticated system here in its own ability to decide who to show this ad to get the purchase. Oh, but I would have gotten the purchase anyway through my newsletter. No, you wouldn't. And so you try to get these people to love your stuff so that when you advertise to them again, they buy it. The system thinks, oh, wow, the conversion rate's so high. It doesn't know that this was an existing customer when it does the optimization. So you're sort of boosting its confidence on purpose, even if you were able to get that with a cheaper CPA if you just blasted emails. Sometimes it's worth being okay with double dipping in your ads to give the system the confidence, to give it enough data, stat sig again, to find the next most probable buyer. This only happens if you've sold stuff to people who are comfortable buying from you again.
Right. It sounds like the algo loves a high-performing customer journey. So if you have an optimized website with a proper FAQ, with proper trust, you show them the payment terms, you show them the other terms, the proper information on the product page, whatever, a smooth checkout process. When you have that in place, plus you have a bunch of previous customers that are more likely to buy, the algo likes that and therefore probably boosts your campaigns automatically thanks to that. Is that the case?
Yeah, for sure.
Do you on purpose sometimes do something in Meta in order to boost your campaign?
No, but we have done, like earlier, it could be worth doing guerrilla tactics of, for example, sending a newsletter close related to specific products, close to launching ads on that specific product, so that people who saw the newsletter on it had, higher frequency of ad impressions around that product, were more likely to buy it. And then all of a sudden you would gain from it short term. But now, we can't focus on all these short term efforts. So what we do now is we see this as, we try to see the 360. And for example, if we do a really good job building our automated flows, let's focus on cross-selling, for example. And we know that when someone came in and bought this black pant, this is what the cross-sell flow should look like. We A/B test in Klaviyo, and after 3.5 weeks, they buy the dark beige. And after 3.5 weeks, they buy the navy. If we can align that cross-selling flow for that person with making sure we have, in our more retargeting part of the structure, have ads related to our main email flows, then even if a person buys on the email flow, they will have seen ads during that time. So the better we become at CRM management and email marketing, the more Facebook will think that I drove this purchase. All these platforms kind of think they are the truth when it comes to attribution. So if you can, stroke their ego and it benefits you, you should.
I think that the big lesson here is like the email part is super important. And that's why I'm still CC'd in every email campaign planning, and Kousha is obviously more active in that part. But also the funny thing is, people say, oh, you worked in Meta, blah, blah, blah. Things change. And sometimes Kousha's like, oh, I'm doing this guerrilla tactic, like the one with the emails. And I'm like, okay, Kousha, who did our account manager tell you that? I was like, no, I read it on Reddit. So Kousha's digging on Reddit for these kind of hacks or whatever as well. I mean, it's completely open to everyone. It's just more on how you execute on it.
So I think a lot of people wonder, what does the campaign setup in Ads Manager look like? So if you just give us a quick walkthrough of that.
Go to YouTube and find any video that explains to you how the algorithm works, how much data you need per target group per week to just have a basic stat sig model. If you don't know basic statistics, I recommend you start there first and understand what statistical significance is and normal distribution, etc. When you understand that and you understand how the algorithm works, your next challenge is to build a business with or without Meta that gets enough data for a system that works like this algorithm that you just learned about uses to optimize. If you do that, then you can just, with that logic, build a structure that makes sense for your business. I can't give a recommendation for a business and say like, this is what's going to work for you without knowing the full context, the repeat purchase, the, how many weeks is the purchase journey before the first conversion, the type of product, there's so many factors in here. But if you want a general note, if you have an expensive agency that is splitting things out into super granular stuff, and with your new statistical skills that you hopefully had from before or that you learned, you realize that with every target group, within every week, I have less than 50 purchases per week, then yeah, your agency is charging you for fluffy stuff. These algos are built for massive target groups. At Facebook, when we were presenting to customers, I remember we got this deck from the engineering team in Menlo Park once, and I was presenting for Black Friday. There was this note like, remind your customers of blah, blah, blah. The note said, if your custom audience, so for people who are listening and don't know, custom audience is when you define a custom audience based off of an email list or like my existing customers or whatever. Normally you upload a list or you define anyone who interacted with my IG in the last 7 days. That could be a custom audience. If your custom audience is smaller than 1 million people, use targeting expansion, aka allow the algorithm to go outside of your audience to help you get the data. How many people, especially Sweden-focused businesses, do you think have retargeting groups or custom audiences larger than 1 million people? These algos are not built for the setup that these agencies here build for businesses. It's just a hustle.
That's interesting. What is your average cost of sales?
Try to keep it at about 25 to 30% of revenue.
What's your GM3?
We really don't think like that.
What's GM3? Is that after logistics or marketing?
After purchasing, logistics, and marketing. Probably 25.
65. That's 65 gone. 35. 30, 35.
So that's the thing. Like, I know, like in Sweden, like Kousha can go into, like we don't think in GM 1, 2, 3. I don't know if I know that's it's a very popularized thing, especially with PE-backed D2C companies.
But many people we've talked to, they talk about Ninepine as like, they think we're very interesting because many businesses look at, well, these are the costs we have. This is the cost structure. This is everything we have to cover, and then salaries and blah, blah, blah. This is what's left for marketing. Let's go create magic. We come from the other end, right? We look at it completely opposite. We're like, this is what we're trying to push. Can we develop this product and charge enough for it so that we can scale it at maximum 30% of this AOV going to marketing first? And then it's logistics. And then it's the other stuff.
Exactly. It's the digital only mindset that you guys apply internally all the freaking time. Let's talk about I said 50%, maybe it's even 60% of the performance machine, which is content. And we had a lunch a few weeks ago, and that was a super interesting lunch because we spoke about content and the content creation and the content output and the content speed. So from idea to delivery of a new ads content, how many hours does it take for you guys to get an idea of this is what I need for the ads ecosystem to the delivery of that ad piece?
If we have the content in our content bank to create it, I've rarely had a case where it's taken more than 18 hours.
And if it's you have to pull off a full shoot, how about that?
If we had to do it and it was like gun to the head urgent, a few days.
Or same day. We can do same day as well.
We can do same day.
So I think like the content piece, as you mentioned, is like one of the cornerstones of the business. We have the product, we have the marketing, content, and website. So the content aspect is crucial. And I think I could be wrong, but I think that every e-com consumer brand should have some sort of production capabilities in-house. For us, like I like to think that we have an internal production company, or as good. Doesn't mean we do everything ourselves. It's a hybrid thing. So we have some stuff we produce ourselves, especially time-sensitive things, and then we have some things we outsource to photographers, we have external editors, etc. And then you also got to think about what type of content. I mean, you mentioned ads, right? Ads is only one aspect. I mean, ads is, and then you have different type of ads. You have the still images, you have the videos, you have infographics, graphic design. Then you have the website, collection pages, product, like the pictures, the images and the videos on the product pages for us is just as important than the ads we produce for Snapchat, Meta, TikTok. So we have all those different things and many different use cases. And for time-sensitive things, for example, if it's like a website, that's a quick one. Usually we don't do shoots specifically, besides studio shoots. You know, we can sit around on the all hands, have an idea, boom, straight in the Trello board. And then when I have, you know, if we can get our editor to do it, or if I need to do it, of course, everyone knows the basic skills in Adobe, in DaVinci, CapCut if you need. I mean,
I use CapCut.
CapCut,
it's the simplest one.
You know, if you don't use Illustrator in design, use Canva. And there's so, like, we've never been so fortunate with all these skills at our fingertips. If you don't know how to do something, look on YouTube. I mean, everything is learnable, especially if you have a quick deadline. And I think that this growth mentality is something we try to keep super core within Ninepine. I mean, even like creating a product page in Shopify, like everyone should know how to do that. And like all the different meta fields and stuff.
And I know so many companies here in Sweden that are looking at your ads and always analyzing, this is Ninepine doing, and we should do this and that, or learn this and that from them. Let's talk about hooks. Do you think in terms of hooks when you create content?
Not anymore, no.
Why not?
Because, well, I think it's a few months now, but it's like 4 or 5 months ago where they launched a system where very, very sophisticated models are analyzing your whole video. So it's one thing creating an ad that captures attention to get a higher or longer dwell time than someone's average dwell time and try to, you know, cheat the algorithm or tell the algo that I have good content. But it also makes it more difficult to earlier on understand who is this ad relevant for, right? Otherwise, you would see every insurance company just using kittens and stuff in the beginning of their videos. It's great for the algo, was, based on how it worked. Today, the algo analyzes your whole video, tries to understand what it is. Almost like back in the day, it was just a catalog ad where it could read the strings and descriptions, understand what you're selling and try to target people who search for that online. It doesn't work like that anymore. I think it's way faster in understanding who this ad is relevant for and which one of the ads you uploaded that is, you know, that deserves the delivery. It's still every 500 impressions that your ad gets a new ad score calculated for it. But many times nowadays, we see ads not even get to those 500 impressions because the system is very confident that this is not relevant.
So it's partly a volume game in terms of events. So you need to hit a certain number of events in order to achieve, what did you say, Stats Inc?
Statsig.
Statsig, statistical significance within the ad. And the other thing is that the ad also requires clarity in terms of target groups. So maybe you have to create different ads for different target groups or different target audiences to give the algo a clarity in who this ad is made for.
Absolutely. And I think the future of targeting is understanding how to do targeting with content. The type of content that resonates with certain demographic. It's not going to be through you setting a hard limit for you can only reach women over 40 and this one can only reach women under 40. That's not how it's going to work. You're going to have to figure out which type of content sells to whom.
I think one really good example that we had when we, in our previous job was we always presented through the Creative Shop, which is like Meta's internal creative agency. They always present this example of like a ride-sharing app. And they had this term where that you had to use different type of content to sell your service or product. And in this car-sharing application, you know, there's like, okay, person A, like almost like personas, like they like the low cost. So then you create an ad that is focused on low cost. The second person is they like fancy cars and the options of XXL and premium stuff. Then you have that in your ad. And the third person is more like convenience, right? And then you have these 3 different messaging kind of thing. I mean, it's no rocket science. Of course, like, as Kousha mentioned, like it's much more difficult today, you know, post iOS, all that kind of stuff, to just launch 100 videos of similar quality but change a little bit. Those days are gone, and that's something that we had to adapt to as well. So yes, it's a volume game, but you have restrictions. You can't just upload the same thing with the first 2 to 3 seconds being different.
And when it comes to the content creation process, and let's split it up between internal content and external content. Exactly what does it look like from idea to delivery for you guys?
There are different types of content, right? And internally, we talk about some ads as like pure UGC or user-generated content. Some ads we talk about as hybrids, which could be, studio content that we've shot in-house combined with UGC. And then it could also be that we have done, a more professional-ish shoot. And for those different categories, from idea to go live is slightly different. Now, if you were to look at, just say, a hybrid ad, for example, we have, external content creators that get briefs from us regularly, and then they send us the content. So we're building this content bank, right? And then I could sit there and be like, okay, now we have enough reviews for this product. We should be able to push the fact that this product is available in 4 different colors and maybe 6 different lengths, whatever. So we have enough material to create a compelling sort of value proper offering, drive people to this product page that are likely willing to pay 100 euros for this product that we're selling. And then Ben and I can, discuss and be like, yeah, this product deserves a hybrid ad. We both know exactly what a hybrid ad is. We know who the content creators are. Okay, yeah, we had some nice content from Sandra last month for this, blah, blah, blah. And then we create these ideas. Sometimes Ben and I meet and we take these Post-it notes, for example, and we write on the Post-it notes like, okay, close-up scene, reviews, USPs, screen record from product page, blah, blah, blah. Storyboarding. And we just put these on the wall and we just move them around. And we're like, okay, this is V1. I want the reviews focused one. Let's do this in the beginning. Okay, this is V2. And we move them around. And we get this overview, and we've done this so many times now that we can visualize what the ad would look like on these different structures. This is just the general case. And then sometimes it could be like, hey, I saw this really cool thing on, how a lot of businesses try to go viral with organic content and they have this gameplay. So they've got like Rocket League playing in the bottom half of the screen, and then in the top half, they're pitching some Bitcoin strategy thing.
It's very
you know what I'm talking about?
I think it's a very male thing.
It's a very male thing. But something like that where it's like, okay, we can't have Rocket League playing in the bottom half of the ad, but if we know that what works for some people is really the close-ups and seeing quality of materials, then we can play around with an ad where the bottom half is purely showing like close-ups or ASMR type scenes and feeling the fabric and the zips and all that stuff. And then the top half could be like posing and inspo. And we just had that idea, and I talked to Ben and we were like, what do you think about this? And Ben was like, yeah, it's a pretty cool idea. 6-7 hours later, we had all the content. He just put it together. I got it delivered. We went live 8-9 hours later. It totally flopped, by the way. It didn't work well at all. But in my head, it was going to go.
I have an idea for V2.
You do?
Yeah.
Fantastic.
But yeah, I guess it's just like getting to know these skills and being able to like clip together a video. And that particular one was a bit of a headache because of the cropping of the 2 frames.
Sorry about that.
That was a bit annoying. But yes, some things I think to have that in-house capability. I mean, Kousha, for example, sometimes if I'm like, he has an idea at night, he'll just go on his phone and like, edit something. It's good. He's not a professional video editor, but you don't need to be. And I think that's the thing. Like some of our content is shot on iPhones. Some of it is shot on cinema cameras. It doesn't really matter, essentially, because the people who look at the cinema camera or like the super nice lenses with super blur bokeh and stuff may not be the same people who react to the UGC and more like organic type of stuff. And the same thing, if we went completely just on the super iPhone stuff, then you might kind of lose the people who are more into the high-end stuff. So again, it's all about this balance and trying to appeal to the tastes and preferences of different people.
And it's so satisfying speaking with you guys. I could sit here for hours, and I just came up with what we should do next because we can't leave it here. I mean, we could sit for hours, right? So we got to do a live stream on LinkedIn and on YouTube and on every single platform, Instagram Live, etc., where we also can talk to the community of the podcast, because people probably have thousands of questions. I personally have thousands of questions. We can schedule a freaking 5-6 hour session with some nice beer and sit down and talk about all this stuff, and then it can be republished in the podcast. How about that?
Love that.
Cool.
Love that.
Freaking awesome, because I have to bail soon because it's fucking dinner time. It's crazy.
Love
Time
it.
flies.
Love it.
All right, so if you would have to recommend one thing to the podcast listeners, you got one thing each. What would that be? Kousha, you can start.
Not as in like recommend a book or something, just something in general.
Whatever.
Yeah. Something I realized, I'm not going to say too late because I have realized it, I would say try and really try to start considering working on yourself very synonym to working on your business. The better you become at understanding your subconscious biases, the better you become at putting your ego aside, the better you will be at making data-driven results and reading data between the lines. And, it goes so much hand in hand with your business. And then we're not even talking about, taking care of your physical well-being so that you can have clarity in your mind and stability in your hormones. So many times I've found myself waking up just having a bad day, and then I have an inventory talk with Ben, and I'm like, let's slice these quantities. I don't think we have the traction. And then the next day, the coffee is super strong. And I've caught myself really been like, okay, I can't make these decisions based off of excitement. I need to stay rational. And that's been a journey of just continuously working on myself, and without having the guilt that I'm not spending this hour on the business, I'm spending this hour working on whatever is related to myself. Today, I find those go very much hand in hand.
What I'm going to say is not advice per se. And it's just something that I've realized and something that I appreciate. And if you want to listen to it, listen to it. If not, it's fine. So with that preface aside, it's not attaching your personal identity to your career, job title, founder, company owner, blah, 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 and stuff, right? I fell for that, at our last job. People would introduce me at a party, say, oh, this is Ben from Facebook. Really, I'm Ben, really? And then...
Ben, by the way.
I'm Ben, by the way. And it's the same thing, like people, I try not to talk about Ninepine so much in a social setting because I'm more than just that. I mean, it's a big part of my life, of course, and people are interested because a lot of my friends wear this stuff. Fine. But detaching yourself from your job and career, I think is so powerful, especially if you lose your job or if you lose, everything it's temporary generally. And I think that's something I tried really hard before a child. I got really into swim run and endurance sports, and that was sort of my identity as well. It's detached from the business, and I had full control how much I trained my performance, besides race day kind of events. I can't control that. But I think that's quite healthy on the mind, really.
And I expected, some performance marketing hacks or whatever as recommendations, but you guys went into personal development instead. And I think that says a lot about you guys, that you're in this in the long run. I think whatever problem you might get during your journey within Ninepine, you'll somehow resolve it, because it's not really about the problem. It's not really about the business itself, but it's rather about yourself as persons and people in the world and the impact you want to create for yourself and the people around you. So it's so much more than just Ninepine, It's about, it's about life.
For sure. This is our life.
And we just happen to be working while we're working. We just so happen to have a company called Ninepine. But at the end of the day, why are you doing this? We have lives. We have to train. We have family. We have friends. And you can't just chase this temporary status for something. But for what? I guess, look, I am personally a victim of this. But when you're into hype beast fashion, for example, and you're chasing the sneaker, I used to line up for sneakers and stuff. And then for what? Was it just to impress other people on the street because you bought the same sneakers and you do a little nod? Nah, I think looking back, I kind of cringe on on those times. But the same thing can be said about career and status, I guess.
Yeah, and anything like stuff, cars, houses, whatever, But thank you so much for coming. Thank you so much for going over time today. I have one more question. Who would you recommend to the podcast?
I would want to listen to someone who runs an A/B testing tool, for example. Someone who talks to a bunch of businesses and sees which changes you would make to a website, a product page, a checkout that can have massive impact that people miss out on. I would be glued just listening to that. I think it's massively underestimated, the power you can have by simply changing the pixel height of your add to cart button.
I'm thinking of Jesper Green, episode number 36, who was speaking about conversion optimization. I think there's more episodes about this, but for sure we can deep dive into that topic as well. And if the listeners or viewers want to get in contact with you guys, how can they contact you?
I think LinkedIn would be the best one. Do you have our names somewhere? It's written.
We'll just link it in the show notes and now I'm gonna switch to Swedish. Så vill ni komma i kontakt med antingen Ben eller med Koushas så gör ni det lättast på länken. Vi kommer att länka deras LinkedIn-konton nere i show notes. Så gå in i show notes så kan ni kontakta dem där. Vill ni komma i kontakt med mig så gör ni det lättast på LinkedIn. Sök på Björn Polma Spenger så hittar ni mig där. Glöm inte att följa oss på alla plattformar. Vi finns på TikTok, vi finns på Instagram, vi finns på YouTube, vi finns på LinkedIn, vi finns överallt. Följ oss överallt så maxar du sannolikheten att du lyssnar på de här lärorika poddarna framöver. Glöm inte att rate oss i podcastapparna som du lyssnar på, både i podcaster men också i Spotify, så uppskattas det otroligt mycket. Jag vill också tacka dagens fantastiska sponsor Juni. Juni är ju huvudsponsor, de sponsrar ju varje fredag hela det här året, år 2024. Det är en finansiell plattform som jag varmt kan rekommendera. Vi använder det i alla våra bolag också. Du kan tracka likviditet, du kan forecasta likviditet, du kan skapa en massa kort för att i realtid kunna tracka GM1, 2 och 3 till exempel. Du kan ta krediter för både ökat marketingspend eller också större lagerinköp och på så sätt så slipper du spä ut dina dyrbara aktier i ditt bolag. Missa inte det här. Gå in på uni.co. Det är typ som att du får en extra CFO internt till ett e-handelsbolag. Så stort tack till Juni som också sponsrar podden. Jag vill också tacka till poddens producenter Michaela Dorch och Fredrik Ankarsköld som sitter med oss här i studion idag. Glöm inte att prenumerera. Stort tack för att du lyssnat. Vi hörs igen nästa fredag klockan 06:00. Hej!